Again, I'm Lori Fahey. I'm the president and CEO of the Family Cafe. I happen to also as the founder of the Family Cafe. And then, Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Joe McCann. I am the policy director at the Family Cafe. Lori rescued me from the lobbying world. Cafe was a client of mine, and I decided for my own mental health that I wanted to come and work there. So I did, and it's been a great experience ever since. So kind of brings a different area of expertise to bear, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
So one of my biggest downfalls is I have ADHD. So I'm going to see all this and probably start talking about something there, but that's beautiful. And I need to see this. So if I get off topic, bring me back, or, oh, Joe will bring me, see, I thought he left me. So Joe will do it. And I also like to walk around when I talk. So I'm sorry if that bothers you. At least you got me on here. Okay. So everyone says, well, what is Family Cafe? Well, I'll tell you one thing. It's not a restaurant. So you can just knock that off. People call, they fax, they scan, and they all want to find out when Uber Eats can come by. I don't know if they're dropping off, they can come by anytime, but we're not a restaurant.
You would be amazed at the number of emails people
Yes.
think that we are.
And they
Why don't we
order.
mention what
They
it
put in
stands
their
for?
order and I'm like, I don't know, understand. So anyway, we're at familycafe.net if you ever want to do a Google search of us. But why the name Family Cafe? Okay, so back in a little bit of an introduction, it's going out of sync here. Will that mess us up?
No. Go ahead.
Okay, so I happen to have, I'm married with 2 children. My son is, I'm so proud. My son is a new father. I'm a first-time grandma as of Tuesday. So I'm delighted and I can't wait until tomorrow night when I go back to Tallahassee so I can see Harper Grace. So I am delighted. If he's listening, which I know he's not, but one day maybe he will, to him and my daughter-in-law, Sarah, I love you both, and Harper, the baby. Also, my daughter was born 3.5 months premature. So out of that came the good old social worker training in me about families getting around the table and trying to find out. Also, I grew up in the country part of Mount Dora, Florida. But in the 70s, when anybody needed anything, when I went to school, if you skip school, your parents knew about it before you try to hide it from them. So it didn't work. I mean, everybody knew everybody. So the old thing is you open your front door. I had 8 brothers and sisters. Our front door was always open and there's always food on the table. And that's where people talk. The ladies would come over and talk. When my grandparents would come visit, my aunts and uncles, everyone sat around the table and talked and did bridge. And that's where all problems of the family were solved. So when we started back again, and I'll go into Carly a little bit more later, but that's where the Family Cafe notion came from. Trying to get families together. What are their needs? How we can go about best to facilitate their needs, to fill the voids, and to help them gain their voice from. So it all connects. So stay with me here. The C is for collaboration. The A in cafe is for advocacy. The F is for friendship. And the E is for empowerment. This little guy over here is my older brother made us a logo. So he passed away, and that is Uncle Paul there. And he made a great big, well, if you go to our website, you'll see it looks like Big Bird, but it looks exactly like him, a mascot. So he was very creative and liked to do fun things like that. So some of the things we do at the Family Cafe, are we there? Okay. Oh, now we're back to introductions. So what we do is the Family Cafe has a signature event. We do lots of other different things, but our signature event is we provide the country's largest cross-disability conference, similar to this. About 15,000 families come of no charge to them. We give about 1,000 hotel rooms of no charge to them. We fundraise. So families, there's no registration fee, et cetera. And we flipped it. So instead of when I worked, we did professional development. This is professional development for families. They came and there's a whole group of them throughout the state and they tell us what they want to see in a program. We ask questions from, we call pink cards. They respond, they ask questions to the state agencies, they ask questions to us, they make requests to how the conference will look next year. We have about 200 and so exhibitors. We have entertainment, we have sensory rooms, we have live entertainment, we have a dance, we have about 220 breakout sessions, again, put on by professionals for families. Thing Joe really helps with is every year since we started this in 1998, we've had our governor in Florida, all years except for one. They come and they do a state of the state to the disability community. Yes, and this year will be our 25th anniversary. So we're bringing everybody back home and we're really going to do it up really nice. So if you're in Florida, it's in the beginning of June, June 9th through the 11th in Orlando, we ask you to stop by. Now, why Orlando? Because from one end of the state to the other end of the state is huge. It's really like everybody else's states. So Orlando is halfway in between. Also, it has Disney World and things like that, because families sometimes never get out for a vacation, et cetera. And we encourage them to attend. So up here at the top with the big smile is my daughter, Carly. Like I said, she was 3.5 months premature, and she is the reason we started the Family Cafe. When I had her, doctor said, go home, she'll be okay. Well, about 8 months, she wasn't doing the things that a baby does. It's okay. So 3.5 months premature, no one told me that she may have issues because she looked great. So I had ran a business. I was a social worker by trade, but I ran a business and I said, I was in management in a business. I didn't run the entire thing, but I wondered, why can I do that? But I can't find services for my daughter. What's wrong here? Something's wrong. So the people who tried to give me services said, you need to go work with this consulting group. Dr. Anita, she knows everything in town. So I went and talked to her and she hired me as a parent consultant to increase family voice. And I'm just trying to figure out where my voice is because I can't find services. I could find a plumber, but I couldn't find services. So I went to work as a consultant and found out they are just not helping enough. They're trying, but they're stuck to whoever the funder is. So she said, oh, you need to go work for the state. So I did that and I worked for the state as a parent consultant. And my job with the state of Florida was to go around and find out what the needs of the families needed from Pensacola, which is in the Panhandle, all the way down to the Keys. So I spent 3 years talking to families and I found out what they all needed was information and how to access information. This is not rocket science. It shouldn't have taken me 3 years. They should have sat down and asked anybody off the street, but you know, they could never find families. I don't know why I was there to find families. You're serving them. You should be able to find them left and right. So then I left the state because they said the providers knew everything. Well, it doesn't work. So round and round and round and round and round we go. So I was at a meeting and started talking to a legislator, and lo and behold, ended up talking to our governor, and he had a little bit of money and he threw it out because he liked my idea of pulling the families together, having staff development for them. You wouldn't hire anybody and say, good luck. Okay, you might want to, but you won't. You'll tell them the bathrooms, the lunch breaks and things like that. So keep me right on time, right?
Okay.
Okay. So these are some of the issues that we had. The families couldn't figure it out. So out of this work with provider groups, we started the Family Cafe. That was 1998. And as Joe said, we're coming up on our 25th anniversary. So that puts me as really old, and a little bit tired. But 25 years forward, the very first year, they say, oh, Lord, no one will come. No one will come. No one cares. It's cross disability. We're still dealing with mental health here, physical health here, juvenile justice over here, other social welfare here, transportation there, housing over there. Nobody ever talked to each other. So why would we want to come together and kvetch or discuss or get families involved with a system that's not going to be able to serve them? Well, that's why. But wouldn't it be great? Because the old social worker in me said, wouldn't it be great if I hosted this event and nobody came? To me, that would have been a home run, because that would mean that as a family, You got all the services that you needed, and you didn't need anybody else to come in and say, you could find what I couldn't find. Then I'd go knock on your door and say, how did you find that? Because I'm still trying to dig. Carly got me into this mess, and isn't she cute? But I have to get us out. I had to get us out of this mess. So that's how my story began. One of the things that, and I'm going to say how I met Joe. During the Family Cafe, a group of youth, and my daughter was part of it, came to us and they needed a home to start a youth council. That was 15 years ago. I raised my hand and said, I don't know what it entails, but we'll do it. It was non-funded, and slowly we wrote bits and pieces into opportunities so they would have some funding to get together. So like I said, that's 15 years, and they've been thriving and surviving, and they do publications, and they have a peer-directed, peer-led with no adults weekend every the 1st of August, where they all get together and they discuss about the issues that are important to them, and they have some educational opportunities. Like I said, there's no parents. Parents drop them off, and they are all between the ages of 15 and 30 across disability. Like I said, Carly has been in every service delivery system except the juvenile justice. Thank God. But she has been in education. She has been DCF for behavioral health issues, mental health issues. She has been in vocational rehabilitation. She's been on the Department of Health because how they separated, how everybody gets funding. She's Medicaid. She's been in every little system, and we had a lot of caseworkers, and they didn't know each other, and they probably still don't, but we all try to work together. Oh, how Joe and I met. Here we go. Our youth council decided that they wanted to pass legislation. So, okay, well, what does that entail? I don't know how to pass legislation. So Joe was premier. He's going to say he wasn't, but he was a big time lobbyist. So we took our kids to Joe and said, because someone knew Joe, I did not know Joe, and said, we need to pass this legislation. He just looked at us and said, I'll make a meeting with this person, this person. And when he does that, he takes you in, but the kids could speak for themselves. And he guided them, and lo and behold, they spoke so well for themselves. They passed the legislation, and it was signed the first year out. I don't know any other groups who have done that, but the first 2 weeks in October through the Department of Education is Disability History and Awareness Weeks. So every school system, well, they used to do a lot better job than we do now. We need to go back and tighten them up, but they discuss, oh, and this is being screened, sorry, Florida. They discuss and promote disability history and awareness in our school systems. So I'm really proud that the youth have done that. That's how I met Joe.
Can we? Okay, thank you. So we'll wrap this portion up. Let me just say, Lori gave a pretty good summary of kind of what the cafe is. We wanted to sort of set that up for you, but just so you know, the cafe is sort of what we're known for, right? But we really do a lot of other things as well outside of the From, which we'll talk about in a second, which was this sort of grassroots up movement from people that would attend the cafe, and the youth council, which you talked about. We have this change agent network, which is sort of a newsletter and an informational thing. We do a podcast quarterly-ish.
Yeah, it's a disability hour.
Yeah, what do we call it? The Family Cafe Disability Hour podcast, and that's on our website as well. And we do at 4 o'clock. Our sessions in Florida are 60 days a year, and we rotate when they start. This year it starts in March because we have an election coming up, and so every other year it'll switch to starting in January. But it's 60 days, so it's one of those legislative sessions that's designed for not a lot to happen. It's like chaos. It's a triage in an emergency room in a big city is kind of what it's like a little bit. And so there's a lot going on. And then also, I just want to say too, if you look at our website, I mean, Lori mentioned this a little bit, but one of the things that I'm so proud of is just the amount of content that we have had over the last 24 years. And much of it is still there, right? If you wanted to get some information from a presenter on just about any subject related to disabilities, mental health, families, that kind of thing, you could look at our website and you're going to see we have a YouTube page and literally like thousands of videos from over the years of different content. So we've really created a treasure trove of data and information for families to look at to help.
So
You got anything else to add?
your family.
Oh yeah, my family, these are my people. So the reason I'm here is I have a brother who has CP. and my daughter has epilepsy. We've had a lot of substance abuse issues in my family as well. And so I always, when I was working at a firm, a great firm and great people, and, disability issues are always sort of my passion. And I realized that with not only the cafe, but a few other clients that I had, which I basically did pro bono. I mean, that was my energy. That was really what I was like, taking a break every day after jumping out of a, fire pit. Right. And so it was just it was a happy place for me. And I'm very happy to be doing that exclusively now. This is my son, Joe, my son, Sean Pat. That's his girlfriend, Ainsley. We like Ainsley very much. And so they come with me. This is truly a family affair. My entire family is there every year, just about. The one person you don't see in that is Molly. She didn't come, but she'll be here next year. So good. Okay. History. This is yes.
So my whole theory is my husband loves history. So he always says to me, you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. So tell me where you want to go, but throw it back to contents where have you been to see your success. He can say you can chart your success that way. So I want to ask you, does anybody know the history of the ADA? Okay. Do you think that it's just all for people with physical disabilities? No. Okay, good. Please do not think it is, because behavioral health is under the protected class. So have you heard of Justin Dart, the godfather of the ADA? Well, he has long passed, but he is known as the godfather of the ADA. He helped and assist such wonderful activists that are still around, and she's very dear to my heart. Judy Heumann. Have you all heard of Judy Heumann? She keeps shaking her head here. She's my type here. So, okay, Judy Heumann is an activist from, and maybe if you all, well, I'll get to it. Let me tell you a little bit. Here is her quote. I'm going to let you all read it. I love this quote. Well, I'll read it to you. Change never happens at the pace we think it should. It happens over years of people joining together, strategizing, sharing, and pulling all the levers they can. Gradually, excruciating, well, whatever. I'm going to blow up the word here. Slowly, things start to happen, and then suddenly, seemingly out of the blue, something will tip. And that's usually how I feel that our life is. Somewhere, something tips our conversation, and we almost gravitate and run to it. A little bit about disability. Disability is the largest minority, and I'm going to repeat, the largest minority on earth. 1 out of every 4. So there's not even 8. There's, well, 2 of us in here have a disability, if these stats are right, maybe even more, because we're at a conference of such. It's also a group that we're all more than likely will join in our lifetime. As we get older, we may need some assistive devices, hearing aids, walkers, etc. Whatever you may need to assist you, assistive technology, etc. We may have some issues in our life with trauma at a young age that's coming out in your 50s and 60s, or etc. But disability was not included in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it wasn't a protected class. It wasn't included in the civil rights movement. I think that's powerful. But in 1970, Judy Heumann was denied a teaching job. Now, Judy has ambulance in a wheelchair. But in 1970, after going to college and everything to get her teaching degree, she was denied a teaching position because, not because of a wheelchair, it's because she could not toilet herself. She could not get into the restroom with her wheelchair to toilet herself. So she sued. And she also wanted to go get, since she couldn't work, let me go try to get some disability benefits because she couldn't get a job because of the discriminations. But the Social Security offices that were required an appointment of her didn't have a ramp, so she couldn't even get in the building. So she was denied services. Right. The employees refused to help her, and she had no other options. Judy also had some friends because, you know, you sort of gravitate to more people like you when you see them. She was a proud member of a disability community that was, and a camp counselor at Camp Jened, Jened. Have you all heard of Crip Camp? Yes, it's an incredible movie. It's free on Netflix. Look up Crip Camp. It's a documentary, so it's not, it is real stuff. And some of those people have long since passed, but it'll make you just appreciate the struggles that because of that you and I every day do not have to go through, and so much benefits that we have. Okay, so Judy investigated and found out that they had not signed the Section 504 of the Rehab Act of 1973. Do you all know what the Rehab Act was? It's access to schools for anybody with a disability. So if you had a wheelchair, you were not denied, you couldn't be denied access anymore. You got a 504. In schools now, you get an IEP or you can get a 504. Sometimes you can get a little blend of both. The government officials didn't want to sign, so Judy and her network of youth across the nation started protesting. Again, watch the movie Crip Camp. She organized protest, and she has very powerful speech in this, and to pass not only IDEA, also the ADA and the ADA Amendments Acts, which protects those with mental health issues and beyond. Many prior to the ADA and Olmstead of 1990s were institutionalized if they had mental health issues or individuals with developmental disabilities that were lacking supports. There's no place for us to go. So, and if you spoke up, it was very unfavorable. So where were they? Moms and dads probably kept them at home somewhere, or they were in jail somewhere, or they were institutionalized. So this stigma affected the public perception of disability. Today, since the ADA, disability is now a protected class as well as an identity. That means a lot, especially I have a daughter with a disability, and now she's younger. She's in her early 30s. But when she was a little bit younger, they used to call it special needs, or they called it differently abled, or all these fluffy words that would make it easier for people to digest of what they were. There's nothing wrong with saying that she has a disability. Yes, she may need supports to get in and out of a building. She may need supports with her job, but it's a protected class, and it defines her because she is protected. She is not protected as a child with special health care needs. She is not protected as someone with behavioral health needs. She is protected under the law as an individual with a disability. So it's not negative. Am I going too long?
Yeah, we gotta move on.
Okay. So as much as 80% of the people with physical disabilities have another hidden disability, which often means they're mental health related. It's no longer you have mental health or you have a physical disability, and this is how we're trying to treat people. We all have an issue and a concern that needs to be addressed, whatever that is. We're looking at the whole community and environment.
Thank you, Laura. I was just going to add, 2 years ago, when we were in the midst of COVID, we had to do our conference in a hybrid format. And for us, doing a conference with, 12 to 15,000 people on a hybrid situation was going to take a while. So it was 2 weeks of all day, 16 days of everything. One of the most interesting, who would have been our keynote, was a guy named Bobby Silverstein. And we're going to end with all the disability rights stuff after this. But Bobby was the staff director of the United States Senate HHS committee when they passed the ADA. He worked for Senator Harkin. Tom Harkin is sort of the guy in the Senate who really got it done. I mean, there were several, but he was the main sponsor. And he just tells the fascinating story of how it worked from the inside. I'm talking about going to the White House to get the chief of staff under President Bush to sign off on this. And the main argument, the main sticking point being, we're not going to actually make buildings accessible, are we? The amount of money that this is going to cost is going to be crazy. And how they came up with the compromise to sort of grandfather certain older buildings in and blah, 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 and everything moving forward. So that's just a fascinating part of it. Please. And that is part of some of the content that's on our website. So please take a look at that. Okay.
Also, to let you know that Joe is also a recovering lobbyist at Washington DC. So
Wow.
he knows not only the
Not really.
Florida system, but the DC system.
So we'll talk about Florida for a second, because it's usually what everybody wants to ask us about. Anybody here from Florida? Anybody been to Florida? Kentucky? You guys were great, by the way. What's that? Born in Florida, where? My apologies. Our apologies. No, of course he was. Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody has a cousin in Florida. It's usually the troubled one, but we'll get on that later. Just kidding. Oh, anyway, so just a little bit about Florida, because that's the universe we live in. It is a great place to live. And yes, it can be a little strange for us at times. We're in the news lately and not always in a good way, but these are just some funny things that, and all states really have these old laws that are, you can't kiss a horse on the lips, this kind of stuff, but we have our share too. I think one of the things that's important to realize, I mean, Florida is, for most people, the second part of their life. And I'm not just talking about retirees. I mean, there's a lot of those, right? And then there are the retirees that come back and forth. But for a very large percentage of the population, I think it's important to understand this, just to understand the psychology. You've raised your kids, right? You're usually, or you're starting over. And so, it's an issue where there's not a lot of roots. It's a little bit like the West was many years ago in some ways. I mean, there's a lot of people that are from Florida, but the majority are not. I mean, we are the third largest state in the country now. Our economy, I mean, one of the reasons that people come to Florida is because it's a very affordable place to live. We don't have an income tax. I mean, we keep that. I mean, that is one of the drivers of our economy. That's not going to change. And so, governing does have a challenge in that regard in terms of the roots and blah, blah, blah. But one of the things that people think, and especially now, is that Florida is just a very red state, or, we get that Florida is actually the closest state in the country. The last 4 presidential elections have been decided by less than 1 percentage point. And, that's pretty amazing. We are a huge swing state. Now, that may change come Tuesday. In fact, there's a very high likelihood that will, because over the course of the last year, Republicans have actually registered Democrats. Most are independents. Democrats, Republicans were always like 34D, 30R. A lot of the independents sort of lean R, but that's changing. And now Republicans are going to have the actual majority, but still not a plurality. So we'll see what happens. And then I just love this little fact, and I looked it up today. So when you put it in your maps, right, on your phone, to drive from Pensacola to Chicago is 833 miles. To drive from Pensacola to Key West is 832 miles. It's closer to drive to Chicago than from Florida to Chicago than from one end of Florida to the other. So, and we have a microcosm of every type of neighborhood and ethnicity and socioeconomic. I mean, you go from Palm Beach to Liberty City in Miami and everything in between. So why don't you talk a little bit about how it started?
Okay.
So the idea.
So as everything else started in our idea, it's not because we were bored. We're a very small office. So everybody had enough work to do. But the families gave us the responses of what they wanted. And we found out is, well, how do I start something? I want to be more than a recipient of services. I want to get engaged or involved. I want to go work in it, or I want to go back to work. I want to become a leader. So there's your first challenge, because not everybody wants to be a leader. So a bunch of them called me over to the bar one day at an event, and they said, how can you help us? How can you facilitate? And my thing is like, if I build it, will you come? But you're going to have to lay out the blueprints for me and tell me how to build it. I need to know exactly how you want it. Otherwise, because by me building it, you may not show. So tell me what you want. So they wanted a couple of them said, hey, can we meet together in Orlando? So sure. So 16 of us got together in Orlando, and we decided that my job was to take the notes and seeing what we can do to facilitate this forming of families getting together. Now, mind you, there's no money for this. There was no money for this. But we had a conference and I said, well, let's talk about it, because we had a pre-conference opportunity that just like this, you'd spend like the pre-conference to any conference you go to, where you could spend a little bit more than the hour and a half, and you could learn about different subject areas. So part of a grant opportunity was to learn about mental health. So we started doing about leadership within mental health, and that's where the ladies came from. We want to take it a little bit further. So that grant went away. So we started tweaking it a little bit more to actually becoming family leaders. So what does it mean? To everybody it means something different. To some people said, well, how do I become a 501c3? Other ones will say, well, how do I become a good board member? Or groups would say, how do I find a good board member? How do I get engaged? I want to do something. I just don't know what that something is. I'm afraid if I go to a meeting, then they'll think that I'm there to work, and maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just there to learn. So we talked about, everyone has a voice and how you wish to use it. You may be a good writer, you may be a good speaker, however you wish to use your voice, please use your voice. So out of that, we pulled the families together and they talked and they laid out the format, and the name came from a family-run organizational movement. And it is a movement, and it's been going on for about 5 years now.
Well, a little more than that with the pre-cons, but
Yeah, more than that with the pre-cons. I'd say about 8 and 10 years with pre-cons, slowly morphing into this. But it came to the point where we said, okay, everyone put your hands in, we're all in. And slowly over time, we've morphed this opportunity into grants, because everything requires funding. And as terrible that is, and no one wants to pay what I feel they should pay to listen to a family voice. Okay. It should be a standard practice, so you don't have to pay for it, but we just don't do it. And to increase a family voice. So talking with Joe and realizing where that they wanted to go, we created a a council underneath our
advisory council.
advisory council underneath our board. Now Joe's going to tell you a little bit more about that.
So yeah, so about the time I started to work at the cafe, and also Lori, we forgot to mention the SAMHSA grant. Jeremy's mention what we do with the SAMHSA.
We're also a recipient of a SAMHSA grant. It's called a Cafe Technical Assistance Center, and we're one of 5 opportunities that are located all over the state and
the country.
Oh, I'm sorry, not the state, the country. And we've had that opportunity for quite a few years now. And every 5 years you re-up for it. And it talks about promoting, and I think we do lots of webinars along with the other centers, and
specifically for adult mental health.
yes, for adult
I just wanted to
mental
mention
health.
that because
And that's why I'm really not going that much into it. It's a great opportunity. If you go to our website, you can go to Cafe TAC. You can see too that there's a lot of great opportunities there for growth and learning. But considering this was like a family and children's, I sort of left it off the table, and I apologize. But it's a great opportunity, wealth of information.
Yeah, and there'd be some good content in that also for
organizational development, employment, housing, you name it.
We have a staff person at the office, and that's literally 90% of his job is to do technical assistance on the adult mental health stuff. But look back to From real quick. So when I came in, we were about year 4 into about 6 years of pre-conferences of planning what this would look like. And what happens here and what happens at the cafe, and this is sort of what happened. This is a little different than what you said. Forgive me, Lori, but it's like there's a lot of people. It is such an incredible event to come to. It is moving. If you come to this thing, I mean, kids have grown up at the Family Cafe. Kids who never get to go anywhere, never get to interact with friends that can relate to them. I mean, so it is almost a religious experience at some level for some people, because it's just, there's a lot of love. There's a lot of love and a lot of people around. And sometimes, and I noticed this, there's an effort to kind of keep that feeling going, right? It's so productive and everybody's together. From is a little bit of an outpouring of that sort of emotion, which is, how do we keep doing this all year? These pre-cons are great. We're learning all this stuff, but how do we continue to assist families, when it's not time for the Family Cafe? And the answer is family-run organization movement. And so what we did is spend a lot of time listening to what family-run organizations need, right? a lot of, when we say family-run organizations, just for the record, that is a nonprofit group, generally not always a nonprofit group, I guess, but made up of a majority of family members who have a person or are themselves have a disability or have a family member with a disability. And so that can contain a lot. A lot of them are very small. I mean, the Family Cafe is a family-run organization. We're obviously much larger now. And these groups are all over the state. And what we find from the cafe is, I mean, we have 22,000 people on the wait list in Florida for services of the home and community-based waiver. So in large part, the Family Cafe has kind of become this quasi service provider. If you can't get on the waiver, there is going to be literally hundreds of nonprofit groups or ideas that you can have to get the services you need and best practices, because that's really important too. And FOM does a lot of that for the organization. So when we first started, we had one regional workshop in Orlando. And what did I think we did on board development. We pick a different subject area, right? And we put together this regional workshop. So people from sort of all over Central Florida came. We had an expert come in, talk about board development, because a lot of family-run organizations, their board of directors, you know, are like Aunt Kathy, you know, cousin Jimmy from Fort Walton, you know, other people. And so sometimes there's a lot of issues with that. So we really went through that in great detail from a nonprofit development expert, and it went really well. Then COVID hit, right? So we all stayed home for 2 years outside of Florida. And it really turned out to be a great opportunity that we didn't know. I mean, we were kind of depressed when it all started. Oh no, we can't go and to all, you know, do all these events, but it ended up being able to just get to so many more people so quickly. So over the course of the next couple of years, we did workshops on sustainability, how to keep everything going. When you get to those points where change is happening, we've done a one-on-one. Actually, we have this one group. I think I can say it, Minnesota Buds. It's an organization, great organization that works with Downs families. Right. So these guys get to a point, and this is kind of a common story where they're being pretty successful. They're really doing great stuff. They get a staff of like 2 people, a very dedicated board of directors, but they're at a point now where they're either going to take it to the next level or sort of wither away. And so those guys were, because they started getting money, they started getting grants from the local governments, and they started giving out some money. And so they were like, man, we need lawyers, we need all this stuff. So anyway, so that's just one example of sort of a board development sustainability issue that we did. That was a one-on-one thing. We've done it on fundraising. Everybody wants to know, where do I go for grants? How do I get money? And, you know, that's always a difficult conversation. That's a lot harder than it even thinks, even though it is very hard. So we had one on that. We did another actually very interesting one on social media. For a lot of family-run organizations, you know, social media is very daunting. Right. And so you need to find a 12-year-old in the room who knows how to work Instagram. I'm not suggesting everybody starts doing TikTok videos, but you need to be on Instagram, you need to be on Facebook, we need to be doing other things like that to get the word out. And that was interesting as well. We did one on advocacy. We did that. That was a pre-com we did this year. That was fantastic. And, you know, talked about best practices in terms of advocacy and other things. And so it's really been interesting. And now we're kind of getting back to the point where we can get out there again. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's about what we do. And it's really evolving. And so when we started, we really saw this thing as going into the communities and helping these nonprofits and family runs with whatever it is that they need. And it's kind of evolved into a little bit more of a virtual situation. And now, and we'll talk about kind of what we're doing next, but we're very proud of how many people we've been able to serve. Because
How many
it's actually been
small
quite a bit.
groups? Well, Joe, realize we got small groups now calling us and saying, we need some technical assistance. We want to be the spot for the groups to network with each other. Not only do we tell them, but we say, do you know, there's Minnesota Buds. We're right down the street from you. Coordinate, start talking, because they may not know. I mean, we're so busy being busy, but sometimes we don't take time out of being busy to find somebody else. We're working so hard that sometimes we just want to say, maybe you don't have to work as hard if you start to do some collaboration. Collaboration and asking other people and talking to somebody is not, when I came up in this, is not something you did. If you found money, God knows you didn't tell anybody. If you found resources, God knows you didn't tell anybody. But how can we bring everybody up unless we tell them all? Because the money pot will grow and the resources all will grow. So we have to take away, because even though Florida's trying to work on it, we're not perfect, but the silos are still there. So we're still knocking them down. And the priority of the day is still there. And the family still needing services, no matter who that provider is, the family will always be there and they need better. They deserve better. Sorry.
Amen. And you mentioned actually networking. It's amazing how many small nonprofits within the same county do very similar stuff and they don't even know each other exists. And so what we have found is just by bringing people together, and I'm a classic overthinker, and Lori's always appropriately telling me to take it down a notch because we can't be experts on everything, but we can give you access to those who understand these issues better than we do. And most importantly, we can bring everybody together. And because like we learned from the Family Cafe, when everybody's working on the same goal in the same room, good things usually happen. Okay, so this is some of the lessons we've learned after a couple of years of probably 7 or 8 workshops, regional meetings, different ways to assist family runs. Everybody has one thing, and it's not always the same thing, right? There's a lot of people that are just having a really hard time with fundraising. A lot of boards are having a hard time with board retention and attracting new board members. They have drama on the board or things like that. We've learned that that's kind of a big issue. Pandemic, it really did. It turned out to be an opportunity to pivot and to virtually have these things. I'll tell you what, it saved us a lot of money, a lot of money. And we were able to bring in experts, people to talk from all over the country. And that's been a wonderful part of this.
Well, now I got to correct. He says it saved us a lot of money, but the money went to find these experts.
Right.
So it saved me money in this pot, but increased my budget. You can see Joe does look at that has a budget here, but the other side of the pot, I had to find some more resources there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I should say logistically, because the
Yes.
first thing we did was really like a hotel thing, and that cost us a lot of money to, have a dinner and a meeting space to rent and all that, and we kind of didn't have to do that. The networking part is super important. I mentioned that before. This was an interesting one too. Being able to help people doesn't mean that, there has to be a packed room all the time. I mean, that smaller, a couple of our really smaller workshops or virtual workshops have been some of the most effective we've done, because we really just drill down, and it actually got very personal. I mean, some of the ones that we've done, I mean, they're talking about their real issues with all in the same room, and we're sort of almost like what do you call it? When somebody is, not a judge, but somebody is, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think. Anyway, that we're sort of organizing how, they're going to move forward and helping them solve their problems themselves. I mean, what's that? Not a consultant, a mediator, a bit of a mediator on that. And so that was fun, but you left that realizing, wow, we really helped these guys. I mean, no, this wasn't like a happy fuzzy thing. We really helped them, and it was hard. And we've enjoyed doing that. Talked about the one-on-one, the families, listening to the families, meeting them where they are. I mean, that's obviously critical. I mean, there's a lot of people are at different points in their journey, and it's really important that we don't overwhelm them from the beginning and listen to the issues that they have. And, just because you've heard it 20 times before, it's okay. And our experts have been very good about listening to the families, and they have great ideas. Sometimes they're doing it a little differently, and that's okay, because they're meeting a need in their community, and it usually starts the need in their family. And so those needs are different. We have been able to get some really good experts. We finally at the point now where people are kind of starting to come to us. So we had this person that we did the social media one, is a fairly prominent person in Miami who's like a journalist and all of this stuff. And so she was fantastic. And that was probably the one where pound for pound people learned the most. I mean, she went into some really specifics. Here's how you work Instagram. Here's what you should do. And here's how you do the this is what all these things mean. And everybody was trying to figure it out. Anyways, it was a very good, it was a very productive. And then to be the bridge, to help them with that one thing that they have to be successful. And it's amazing how often that one thing is different and how it's not just money. Guidebook. So the guidebook is really the production is sort of a combination. We have a great, we need to give him a shout out, John Ferrone, who is a consultant that we use. He's out of Nebraska, a good friend of ours, been working with us for a while, has helped us with some of the content for some of the workshops that we've done. And this is sort of a collection of all of it, and more, and then some. But this, when we were slowing down, right, because of COVID, we thought, well, let's create a guidebook. Let's create sort of a collection of all of the best practices and kind of everything that we use. It's in this format because we want to add to it. We want to be able to improve it as we go. And I think you'll find that it has a lot of information there that's relevant to just about any nonprofit. We're a very large one, and please help yourself. Whatever you don't take, I am going to walk through this place and hand out so we don't have to take it home on the plane. It's really heavy. So please take it.
So what we want to hear though from you all, since we have a little bit of, oh, I'm sorry, you go, Joe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wanna go second?
Yeah.
So guys, let me just say too, this was a 60-minute presentation. So we are timed here for a 60-minute thing. So we might go a little late, but we definitely won't use all 90 because it's always going to be an hour. But so this is sort of where we're going from here. And by the way, we are always open to suggestions or anything, but we decided that we're going to get back out. So we're very excited about this. But even in the nonprofit and family run world, there is just a massive disparity from obviously rural and disadvantaged communities with everybody else, right? And so we really wanted to focus on the rural communities, which there is a lot in Florida, and the disadvantaged communities. And so we're putting together programming for this next year that we will have a workshop that we can bring to different locations. And we're going to go to places like Pensacola, Gainesville, Lake Worth. I mean, we're not just Orlando and Miami and Fort Lauderdale. We want to go to some of the smaller communities and really help people who are really in the weeds, So that's something we're going to be doing. And part of that is creating that content. And it's all about collaboration. I mean, we learn as much from the people we're serving as we're able to assist. And it's really amazing. It's amazing to deal with people who are so committed to what they're doing. It's their life, and it's an honor to help. And yeah, these are just a couple of other ideas. Didn't know if you guys know of programs similar to this in other states. We would love to connect. And then also just kind of how we can help each other in this process.
So along with this guidebook that I see a bunch of them still sitting over there, we can also send it to you electronically.
Oh yeah, it's on the website. You can download it.
Yes, you can get it off of our
Send you the
website.
link.
If you are to use it anywhere, we only ask that you just say, hey, we stole it from these people. Steal whatever you can do, because we want to raise up the voice and the conversation. But do any of you belong to anything? So you're all EDs, right? Of your organization? No? Yes? Any executive directors?
Yeah. So for me, it's Washington State Community Actors. And Washington State Community Actors. And so the design of our organization is not direct on family service, but to help with the workforce development of parent peers, to connect all of smaller family run organizations in the state and with that. So do you give them technical assistance and training on a pre-described workforce? Because you say that's where you work with, or you just do on whatever subject you're doing. We have a venue of training. So there are state peer certifications in the state. So if you want to work as a peer, our trainings are for anything like a counselor or a brand new member that's just learning how to get involved. See, the whole thing that we point out to
Is that each state, each opportunity, again, we weren't looking for this, this found us. But they were looking for a way to connect. Now, since we bring all the families together and like they say, they connect. The other thing about our event is we say, bring your families. So event here, you see everybody who's a parent, but if you can imagine all the little ones or the youth, we have a whole youth track and we have opportunities, a birth through 3 opportunities. We have a sensory room and, you know, book fair and music going on and face painting, coloring and blah, 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 blah. So there's something for every age and stage of your life. So when families said the EDs or those who want to be starting, they say, I don't know how to do this. So that's when they connect with us and we either tie them to somebody else or we bring, how many other people are talking about they don't know how to do this and bring it all together. So I applaud your efforts. Thank you. That's wonderful because that's what you don't have. You feel like you're the only person in the world who has this problem.
And we're exactly, these are what we're working on now, this level that we're focusing on rural and communities and trying to figure out how to, you know, bring services. And work with families that are better. You know, we're trying to figure out how to get our trainings and content shared in different languages. Yeah, and we're reaching out to other states to figure it out. So.
Well, if we can help, like I said, steal anything you want. Good. If you take something though, maybe every once in a while, just say, we stole this from Family Cafe. Yeah, toss me on some credit there. So other people will come and steal from us too. Is there anything that you all wanted to know that we didn't hit on? Is it what you thought you came for, or you just thought you were in a quiet room? Was it worth the popcorn?
I think it's excellent information. I work for an organization called My Kid in Arizona, and we were formed by our founders, the Gilberts, and sitting around the kitchen thinking kind of exactly the story that you provided. I was actually the board president up until a year ago, but I love the mission so much that the ED that we hired as board, they wanted to diversify their funding, so I came in to help diversify their funding because we build Medicaid or we get our funding to all about their plans.
Right.
I think some of the biggest challenges that I see within our organization is learning licensing, learning what you can do, what you can't do, and a lot of staff have been there for a long time, so it's been hey, you may have volunteers, no, we can't have unless they have pre-printers. That's it.
Right.
You know, why? Okay, well, how do we get more donors? How do we engage with the community unless they see, feel, touch what we do? So the social media aspect, we're working on trying to figure out how to develop a good volunteer program, how to get more donations, diversify our money grants, and it's been a challenge, I think, just due to the fact that a lot of the leadership have been so used to the status quo, and then me coming in kind of rocking the boat.
Good for you.
But it's good because I'm not there for any families and kids.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's interesting.
Well, you say social media, not the hardest part we have in our office with social media is everybody has one of these. Okay. But this always carries you with your limitations. Okay. Now, I swear we mail, and everybody wants everything in the mail still. But I think these families are semi-nomadic. So I can mail them something, they give me the address, I'll confer with them, it's here. I mail out, you know, $5 worth of pack and it comes back to me, no such number, no, you know, whatever. Like, and then I call them, no, this is my address. Now, someone's not right here. Go by and pick it up at the time. And to get things on social media, they're not accustomed to using their phone and using what limited access they may have to their phone to download anything else like that. And those that do work are not going to go and bring up something that's not from their job, that do have a computer in front of them, even like a state worker. There's a system that tells somebody in the IT world when you go and shop. So and say, well, I'm on my break. I just needed to order this from Target, they don't care. It's you get a ding. So it's hard to figure out what you're going to do with social media and how am I going to attract you with the social media when I have this much time? So, or this much opportunity.
You just brought up a great point that I've been thinking about. One of the hardest questions that we get is legal questions. And that's just something you don't ever want to, especially for somebody like me that only plays a lawyer on television, but is in fact not one. That would be a good workshop with a bunch of lawyers to go, what do you tell them? Where do you send somebody short of having a competent lawyer friend, which even in that situation is, you don't want to do it, right? So let's get really down into the practical challenges that family runs have. Anybody else have any other questions or, yes, ma'am.
I was gonna say, in Minnesota, we had a family-run organization that we have built from the ground up, a Bible.
Wow.
And we were getting some of our funding from collaborative, background initiative grant, and then director of our family-run organization that we did collaborative. And the next thing you know, all of our years was just like, oh.
Yes, that is very common.
I was in 2005. Everything that happened, so,
Yeah.
Or all engaged a lot of family who are here who games, so families also who don't live here. And then all of a sudden, when you're out for some days, you can be there, people let you know that this is not working, but they only know what they know when you always hit those ground pages for whatever that is. And that's what they do. So they get irritated with that, so that's another problem. That is, you can't hear each other because I'm sure in the state board, I know a lot of state boards want to be, but they don't get great on how well you have here for the see that it might tell them so much they do here. Well, they have to do things over here to ensure that they can fund. And we all know how you can take someone's money, but you don't know sure. So skirt over. The first thing I said, my husband,
We're still splitting it. If John buys it, are we still splitting it? John buys it in Florida, are we still splitting it or do we have to do that here? Okay, just want to make sure. Hey, I wanted to say this. You told him? You told him? Okay, this is on camera. This is going to happen. Yeah, okay, good. What's that? Oh, sorry.
Here, things will never see me.
Yeah, right. It gets confusing when there's $1 billion on the table, Lori.
Okay.
It's better to be an optimist.
Yes.
Right, it's true. It's true. Yeah, you can't be anonymous. Hey, can I just add one thing to what you said? One of the things, and this was actually a couple of the pre-cons that I found very interesting. A lot of the questions, it's really kind of a sustainability issue too. A lot of people, when they're honoring somebody, right, and a nonprofit, a child especially, there's a lot of times where you have to sit back and wonder, am I just repeating what a lot of other people are doing? I mean, maybe your challenge would be better spent helping Mothers Against Drunk Driving or, some other organization that's out there. We don't all have to start our own nonprofit organization. Many do, many should, most do, and most should. But for a lot of people, long term, it's going to be hard because there's several other people doing the same thing. And unless you are talking to everybody, you just don't know it.
Yes, so stay engaged, stay involved.
Right.
It's not your organization. The momentum is so really here. But so I know that if anybody else could bring something in, really starting that happened in 05.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
Take that energy and either rise from the Phoenix or go to another organization and help them to
for their voice to be heard. It's not, you can't get it all up in one organization, or two or three or four. It's gonna take all of us, and, you know, everybody's only speaking in United Voice. Speak up. I believe that it's not. United. So the city don't have to follow the same pattern. You know, as to get in the house, you all don't have to always go in the front door. Again, I grew up in a very rural part with my house was 100 years old. And only was a lock, age myself, but our front door was the only door that had a lock. No one went through the front door. The windows didn't have locks. No one went through the front door. The only reason the front door was there, I guess it was the car, or something referred to it. And that's where the piano and the guitar and the violin sat. Nobody else went in there. But that's where it is. But all that was happening was through the back door. So don't think that you all put in the front door.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Guys, thank you so much for coming, and please, well, and yeah, and if you know somebody out there that needs it, we'll send them in. You'll see me wandering around passing out. Yeah.